Haunted soldiers expose sinister secrets, 17 unexplained incidents from the front lines of Iraq. Marissa sat at the edge of her bed, heart racing as she read the text from her brother. You won't believe what happened today. It's not just war, it's something else. The words echoed in her mind as she flipped through other alarming messages detailing shadows lurking in the desert, whispers in the dark, and soldiers vanishing into thin air. It all felt surreal. Yet, in Ohio, the weight of her brother's deployment felt heavy on her chest. The anxiety had crept in like a thief, robbing her of sleep as she balanced 2 jobs to provide for her 8-year-old son, Ethan. Each night, after the fluorescent lights of the diner flickered out behind her, Marissa took calls from the world, yet felt incredibly isolated. The irony stung. Surrounded by voices, all she could hear was her own doubts bouncing off the walls of her home. Mommy, what's wrong? Ethan asked, his innocent emerald eyes searching for reassurance. She forced a smile, but inside, dread brewed. The house was their sanctuary, but lately, it felt like a stage for unseen whispers, shadows dancing just beyond her vision. Just yesterday, she had caught the neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, staring too long at her, the corners of her mouth twitching as if she knew something. Marissa glanced out the window, the evening sun casting long, eerie shadows across the yard. She shivered not from the draft but from an unsettling feeling gnawing at her core. What was happening in her quiet neighborhood? Her brother's messages became more frantic. I can't explain, but trust me, something's wrong here. Stay safe. At first, she waved off the paranoia as stress, but when the lights flickered and strange noises echoed through her home, low moans, rustles like footsteps, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to warn her about something creeping closer. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. One night, as thunder rolled in and the wind howled like a banshee, she sent another desperate text. To her horror, a muffled voice rose above the storm, echoing her brother's name. Marissa felt ice creep into her veins. Rushing to the window, she squinted into the darkness, pulse racing, but nothing stared back, only shadows that seemed to stretch and curl. In those fleeting seconds, she felt eyes on her, piercing, sinister. Whatever was out there knew her. More gossip swept through the neighborhood, whispers of Mr. Jennings, the seemingly upstanding community leader with ties to a military contractor. What did he know? What was hidden beneath his polished smile? Marissa's trust began to fray. That night, as she laid Ethan down to sleep, a chill settled over her. She turned to the door when she heard a soft creak, but nothing moved. She collected herself, sinking into dread, feeling the weight of every unexplained incident her brother had detailed. It was all coming for her. What had once been mundane appeared insidiously potent, the calm before a storm brewing just below the surface. Marissa's thoughts spiraled, adrenaline rushing through her. As she clutched a stack of increasingly grim messages, she knew she was getting closer to the truth, but who could she trust? Something was coming, and it felt like it had long been waiting for the right moment to strike. With a near-silent gasp, she opened her door, only to find an envelope on the floor. It lay ominously, marked with her brother's name and sealed with dread. Her heart pounded as she leaned down, and the world around her faded, leaving behind only shadow, and the abyssal question, what was unleashed? Marissa's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope, a dark, foreboding weight pulling at her gut. She stared at the handwriting, her brother's familiar yet somehow warped, like he was a different person now. The world outside her window faded into gray. The shadows deepened, creeping closer, and she could hear a low hum, like dissonant whispers chanting just below understanding. Ethan. She called, voice catching in her throat. He was downstairs, blissfully unaware of the terror inching into their lives. The light from the street lamp flickered, and for a brief moment, a figure flashed outside, disappearing just as quickly. Marissa stiffened, her heart pounding in sync with the mounting dread. With shaking fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside, there were pages, distorted drawings and frantic handwriting taking over the plain white sheets. Unfamiliar symbols were scrawled beside references to the Watchers, the Entity, and the others. Each line unraveled her sense of reality further. The images seemed to shift and morph under her gaze, like something alive, probing her mind. She stumbled back, clutching the pages to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. There was an urgency, cruelty in the manifestation of fear, much like the encroaching night. Gripping the pages, she caught a glint of silver peeking out from below. A small key. She looked around, her eyes darting from wall to wall. Was it for the shed? Or maybe a locked drawer in the house? Panic seized her. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice echoed from below, creeping up the staircase, breaking her trance. Marissa snapped out of her turmoil, forcing the fear down. She licked her dry lips, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Just a minute. She rushed to push the envelope under her pillow, discreet, hidden. She had no time to process the madness that was spilling into her life. As she made her way down, a sudden cold draft swept through the hallway, slamming the door behind her. The sound was unmistakable, loud enough to restart her heart. She turned back sharply, dread curling around her throat as she took 2 cautious steps toward the door. It swung ajar, a gentle invitation or a warning. "Ethan!" She called, voice wavering, unsure if she should keep moving toward the living room where the light flickered like a warning beacon. Did he need her? Or did the shadows? "Mommy, I can't sleep," he whined. Sucking in a breath, she approached the living room. The wind howled through the cracks, and she could swear low voices floated across the room. It felt alive, cracks in the walls whispering secrets, echoing memories that didn't belong. "Stay right there," she shouted, panic overtaking her instincts. The room felt steeped in dread, filled with unspoken truths. Each shiver in her spine told her to flee, but the maternal instinct pushed her forward. Her foot caught on something, a toy left lying innocently on the floor, and she stumbled. As she steadied herself, she glanced toward the window and froze. There, in the glass reflection, behind her, stood a dark figure, tall and menacing. It felt wrong in the way everything in her gut screamed for escape. Whispers intensified, merging with her pounding heartbeat, the room growing darker. "Mommy?" Ethan's voice trembled, inching closer. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as the figure faded into the shadows, but the sense of being watched remained crushed into the air. Marissa whirled around, but it was empty, nothing there except a thick, agonizing silence. "Stay close to me," she yelled, urgency blooming as she rushed to Ethan, ready to shield him from whatever might lurk in the dark, but the light it flickered one last time, then went out. A suffocating darkness enveloped them. In the blackness, she held her breath, fingers gripping Ethan tightly, waiting for the worst. Then came the sound, a low growl, almost a whisper, calling her name. The world shrank, and her heart plummeted as she realized the truth. The darkness was not merely absence of light, but something much more sinister and hungry. What had she unknowingly invited in? Marissa squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, her heart racing against the pulsating darkness. Shadows danced around them as if joining the invisible audience watching their fear unfold. The growling voice came again, a soft rasp that chilled her to the bone. "Marissa." She swallowed hard, the air heavy with an acrid stench of mildew and something else, something rotten. "Stay close," she urged, her voice shaky but firm as she pulled Ethan into her arms, feeling the frantic repetitions of his heartbeat echoing against her. "We're okay, right?" His whisper quaked with fear, reflecting back at her like an innocent child lost in an impending storm. With nothing but pitch-black void surrounding them, she forced herself to think. The key. It still weighed heavily in her palm. Maybe it was a way out. Or a means to uncover the truth hidden behind locked doors. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening, it all tied back to her brother's warning. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me," she said, her voice regaining strength. "If I tell you to run, you run, okay?" "Okay," he answered, his trust grounding her in the chaos. She took a step backward, her foot meeting something cold and metallic. "What?" She bent down quickly, fingers fumbling against the floor, and felt a handle. It was a trapdoor, heavy and old, weathered with years of neglect. As if sensing her discovery, the growling grew louder, almost mocking her. The whispers of the shadows increased in number, layering over one another as if the darkness itself was alive, hungry for her response. Ethan's breathing quickened, and Marissa felt sweat trickle down her spine. "We don't have much time," she whispered. She pulled at the handle with all her strength, and to her astonishment, the door creaked open, revealing a set of dark, narrow stairs leading down into the unknown. "What's down there?" Ethan's eyes were wide, filled with the bright spark of fright. "Only one way to find out." She pulled him tighter against her, scanning the room one last time. The encroaching shadows seemed to recoil just a little as if holding their breath, waiting for her next move. "Let us go," she said, stepping into the murky void below. The air was cooler here, laced with the scent of earth and forgotten things. A dampness clung to her skin as they descended, the sound of each footstep swallowed by a terrible silence. At the bottom, the narrow corridor stretched before them, barely wide enough for both of them. Walls lined with aging stone, rough and unforgiving, closed in, and Marissa could feel their oppressive weight. The growling shifted, now resonating from deeper within the shadows of the corridor, threading its way through the silence, wrapping its cold fingers around her spine. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan whimpered, pressing close against her side. "Me too," she confessed, heart thumping like a war drum. But they kept moving, each step fueled by a primal fear that drove them towards a flicker of hope that lay ahead. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath her feet, as if responding to her mounting dread. She barely steadied herself, wrapping an arm around Ethan protectively. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. A scratching noise grew louder from behind them, clawing at the walls, clawing at the space between light and shadow. Cold air rushed up from behind, sending a shiver up her spine. "Run!" she yelled, breaking into a sprint, pulling Ethan along with her as darkness pursued them, shrieking its hunger. They reached the end of the corridor and found themselves standing before an ancient door, gnarled and twisted, ensnared in shadows. "Open it!" Ethan shouted, panic surging in his voice. Her heart raced as she fumbled with the key, hands shaking uncontrollably. Just as the door creaked open, the whispers turned into angry roars, echoing off the walls. She turned back, feeling the oppressive weight bearing down on her shoulders. What once was silence now swarmed with the promise of calamity as she stepped through. And then, abruptly, everything stilled. She turned around, half expecting to face the dark heart of the terror that chased them. But instead, she found herself standing in a room filled with artifacts, an ancient relic hidden away from light. On the wall, a faded map lay open, its contents shocking her into despair, a map detailing locations of the Watchers. Her blood ran cold as she traced a finger over a marked symbol that looked disturbingly familiar. "Marissa," the voice whispered again, this time more insistent, and the shadows seemed to thicken even more around her. What did it mean? And who were the Watchers? In that moment, she knew the truth would be more terrifying than any shadow that haunted them. A soft noise behind her broke the silence as she turned again. Was something waiting just out of sight? Or had the darkness finally caught up with them? Marissa's breath caught in her throat as she stood frozen, her fingers still grazing the faded map. The air grew thick and electric, the whispers around her morphing into urgent murmurs. With a racing heart, she shoved the key into her pocket, hoping it was still useful amidst the mounting dread. "Marissa?" Ethan's small voice trembled beside her. She glanced down, seeing his wide eyes reflecting her terror. "Shoo," she whispered, lifting a finger to her lips. The shadows that had once been mere wraiths now coiled around the room, reaching toward them like fingers grasping for lost souls. Where were they? The artifacts, rusted swords, cracked pottery, faded paintings seemed to watch her with hollow eyes, echoing a past steeped in darkness. Should we go back? Ethan suggested, his small voice breaking. The thought sent a fresh wave of fear rippling through Marissa. The corridor behind them felt like a trap, closing in like a vice. But the room ahead seemed to pulse with an energy that was almost magnetic. "No, we're not going back," she replied, her voice sharper than intended. "We have to find out what this means. Follow me." She took a cautious step toward the center of the room. The air thickened with anticipation, each small sound amplified, mocking their every move. The shadows cast by the flickering light of a dying bulb revealed a figure, a statue made of dark stone, etched with grotesque faces contorted in eternal agony. It stood guard over the map, as if it were the keeper of secrets long buried. Marissa couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her, too. Her heart raced as she approached it. "What's that?" Ethan whispered, pointing at a glint on the statue's chest. Marissa leaned closer, squinting at the object embedded in the stone, a small, ruby-red gem. As she reached for it, she felt an icy wind whip through the room, snuffing the faint light. Shadows seeped around her, curling ominously like smoke. The whispers intensified, morphing into a cacophony of voices. "Marissa, Marissa!" A chorus of sounds cried out, each tone dripping with pain and longing. "No!" She jerked back, her breath quickening, eyes darting around, searching for the source. Ethan pressed against her, his warmth a shock against the encroaching cold. "I want to go home," he said, his voice clinging to desperation. "I know," Marissa replied, her mind racing. "But we have to figure this out first." Suddenly, the darkness swelled, covering the walls like ink spilled across parchment. The shadows whispered her name now, a ghostly chorus faint yet alive. The fragmented faces of the statue began to shift, almost convulsing as if they were awakening from a deep slumber. "What if we take the gem?" Ethan suggested, proof of his bravery in the face of fear. "No, wait," she warned, but it was too late. Before she could stop him, Ethan had reached for it. With a resounding crack, the gem detached from the statue. In an instant, the walls exploded with an eerie glow, light flooding the darkness. The visions shifted, images of the past swirling around them, battles fought, lives lost, moments of horror. Ethan gasped as he stumbled back. "What is happening?" "I don't know," Marissa shouted as she shielded her eyes against the brightness. Then the world around them shattered like glass, and all at once, the images clashed, forcing her to see what lay beneath the surface. Panic seized her as the light pierced through her mind, filling it with secrets better left undisturbed. And just as the brightness threatened to consume them, the door behind them slammed shut with a deafening thud, sealing their fate. "Marissa!" Ethan screamed, clutching her hand. Just then, the shadows rushed in, converging toward the source of the light, seeking the gem, and the whispers crescendoed into a can't-miss wail. "We have to get out!" she yelled, urgency flooding her veins. But as she turned to the door, a figure emerged from the darkness, tall, cloaked in despair, its hollow eyes locked onto hers. Marissa could only watch as the shadows wrapped tighter around Ethan. Had they awakened an unfathomable horror? What did we unleash? She thought frantically, knowing the answer would haunt her forever. And then, with a voice that shook the very fabric of her reality, the figure whispered, "You are not alone." The finality of those words echoed around the room, chilling her to the core. What did it mean? And what else did the darkness hold? Marissa's heart thundered in her chest as the figure loomed closer, leaving a trail of shadows swirling in its wake. The faint glow of the gem danced, casting sinister patterns across the room, distorting the grotesque faces on the statue into masks of torment. "Ethan, stay behind me!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. The raw edge in her voice seemed to cut through the murmuring darkness, if only for a moment. Ethan's voice trembled, wide-eyed, lost between fear and the bright light that now flickered dangerously, creating an unsettling contrast to the encroaching darkness. The figure shifted, its cloak billowing as if caught in an unseen wind. "You seek the truth, don't you?" It spoke in a voice that scraped the floorboards with every syllable, awakening echoes long forgotten. "What truth?" Marissa managed to stutter, instinctively clutching Ethan closer, a protective barrier against whatever lay ahead. The shadows around the figure twisted, grasping at her like desperate hands. "The truth of those lost the energy of their suffering, it feeds me." An icy chill seeped into Marissa's bones. It was as if the very air knew their terror, relishing in it. She glanced at the ruby gem, its lustrous light flickering uneasily. The whispers crescendoed, pulsating in her mind, they come, we need to go." Marissa urged Ethan, her feet rooted to the ground, paralyzed by the figure's penetrating gaze. She felt an overwhelming compulsion to flee, but fear kept her bound. With a sudden burst of bravery, Ethan pulled away. "Maybe if we ask it'll let us go." The innocent suggestion sent waves of dread crashing over Marissa. "No, no!" she cried, reaching out, but he stepped forward, determination etched on his small face. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, his voice steady against the storm around them. The figure turned slightly, its hollow eyes narrowing. "I want to share them with you, to open the door and let you see what remains." The shadows tightened, shifting like a living entity around them. The walls seemed to pulse, throbbing with unseen breaths, resonating with the confusion swirling in the air. "Don't listen, Ethan. You don't know what it wants." Marissa's voice broke with panic. She could feel the darkness clawing at her resolve, pulling her into its depths. "Please," the figure hissed, its voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers racing down her spine. "You already belong. With me you will understand." For a split second, a visceral temptation gripped Marissa, a strange yearning for the secrets held in that darkness. What if there were answers? What if the pain of the past could reveal why they were here? But as quickly as the thought arrived, a fiercer recollection of Ethan's fragile form brought her back. "Let him go!" she shouted, breaking through her moment of weakness. "We're not here to be your puppets." At that moment, the figure lunged forward, just as the shadows erupted around Ethan, wrapping him in an inescapable embrace. "Ethan!" she screamed, forcing her feet into motion, darting toward him. The gemstone's light flickered weakly, as though struggling against the weight of the encroaching darkness. "Marissa!" Ethan cried out, panic and confusion flooding his voice. She could see him, eyes wide and terrified, struggling against the mist that pulled him away. "You can't have him!" Marissa screamed, reaching out into the swirling shadows. But just as her fingers brushed against Ethan's, the walls forced her back, a surge of force repelling her. The figure drew nearer, a mocking smile twisting its lips. "You awaken the dead, but can you save him?" With every lurch of his body pulled deeper into the abyss, the world around Marissa swirled like the aftermath of an explosion. She was losing him, and clarity struck her like a bolt. "Let him go!" she shouted, her voice rising to a furious pitch, breaking the cycle of fear. In a moment of desperation, she grasped the gem tightly and held it aloft, its light struggling, yet defiantly glowing. "You want this? Take it!" The shadows recoiled as if stung, a chorus of anguished wails rising around them. As Marissa hurled the gem toward the figure, time slowed. Will it work? She wondered. Will it save him, or only unleash more horror? The gem struck the figure, bursting into a brilliant, blinding flash that threatened to unravel everything. Then silence. What have I done? The question echoed in the void, heart pounding, as darkness swallowed both the light and the figure, and the whispers, now taking on a different tone, slithered back, mumbling secrets long restrained. What other truths lingered in the shadows? Something stirred in the darkness, behind where the figure once stood. An answer? Or a deeper nightmare? Marissa felt dread pull at her, and she knew whatever came next would change them forever. "Ethan, stay close," she said, fear clutching her throat. But as they stepped forward into the darkness together, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were answering a call, one they might not escape. Marissa blinked, the darkness wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. The silence was deafening, yet the air crackled with unsaid words, secrets clawing to be unleashed. "Ethan?" she whispered, her voice trembling in the void. No answer came, only the oppressive weight of shadows pressing against her skin. Panic surged. She could feel her heart racing, each beat pounding in her ears like an ominous warning. "Ethan!" Panic gripped her tighter now. She strained her eyes, searching for his small silhouette, for any sign of movement, but all that met her gaze was an endless expanse of black. "Where are you?" Each word felt futile, swallowed by the yawning darkness. A low whisper slid through the shadows, barely audible. Marissa, it wafted around her, a cold breath that stirred the hairs on the back of her neck. The voice echoed with familiarity but twisted into something barely recognizable. "Ethan?" She called again, forcing her feet to move. Every step felt like wading through gelatin, each motion stunted as though the darkness was alive, pushing back against her. Suddenly, a flicker of light ignited ahead. Marissa rushed toward it, the glow faint but tangible. Her heart fluttered at the hope it ignited. "Ethan!" She called again, urgency turning her voice sharp. As she neared the light, she stumbled into a room. The air changed. Heavy with an unseen weight, it was different from the enveloping darkness she'd left. In the center stood a small, weathered table, a singular candle flickering defiantly in the oppressive gloom. Shadows slithered across the walls, stretching and retreating in time with the candle's flame. Marissa crouched by the table, drawn to a worn book lying open. The pages fluttered as if touched by invisible hands, the script scrawled in a hurried, frantic manner. It spoke of curses, of offerings, of souls trapped between worlds. Each word ignited an echo of dread in her chest. Ethan, the name felt like a prayer slipping through her lips. "Please." A chill danced along her spine. Disregarding every instinct screaming to retreat, she leaned closer to the book, the candlelight casting ominous shadows over her face. As her fingers grazed the yellowed pages, the whispers returned, this time sharp, urgent, almost pleading. "Find him or join him." Marissa jerked back, her breath hitching. Something shifted behind her, a shift in the air. She spun around, adrenaline igniting her senses. The darkness felt alive. It coiled back from the candlelight, a sinuous mass of despair that pulsed with an unholy hunger. "Ethan!" She shouted again, desperation clawing at her insides, mixing with the fierce determination rising within. "I'm coming for you." And then she noticed them. Faces, fleeting and tormented, swirling within the shadows like lost souls clawing at the edges of oblivion, eyes wide with suffering, mouths open in silent screams. She staggered back, a primal fear seeping into her veins. This place, the shadows it hungered. A realization hit her like a slap, they were not in control. The candle wobbled, the light flickering as if mocking her realization. Shadows surged toward her, intent on drawing her back into their cold embrace. In that moment, panic crystallized into purpose. If she could find Ethan, if she could break the chains binding him, perhaps they could escape this nightmare together. "Let him go!" Marissa shouted defiantly into the darkness, the fire within her roaring to life. "I want to let you take him." With that, she plunged her hands into the pages of the book, her heart racing as the whispers exploded into a cacophony, a symphony of lost souls clamoring for release mixed with her own desperate cries. The shadows recoiled, and she could feel the suffocating grip loosen just a bit. But she knew she was racing against an unseen clock. In the midst of her turmoil, a cold whisper brushed against her ear, "You cannot escape." The candle flickered violently, and shadows lunged, trying to reclaim their hold over her. Marissa's pulse thundered in her ears. "I will find you, Ethan." As she spun to face the oncoming darkness, a chilling realization crept in that some truths were never meant to be unearthed. What awaited her in the depths of this terrifying realm? Would Ethan be waiting on the other side? Or had she awoken something far more sinister? Time twisted, and the air crackled with a desperate energy. The shadows pressed in closer, as if demanding her next move. Marissa's fingers tingled with heat from the book, an electric connection that sparked both dread and courage. The shouting shadows drew closer, and she could feel their icy breath curling around her frame. Each face twisted in her mind, were they warning her or luring her in? Find him, the words spun in her head like a taunt. She held her breath, squinting at the pages illuminated by the sputtering candlelight. A grotesque image caught her eye, a sketch of a twisted figure draped in shadows, reaching out with skeletal fingers towards a group of hapless souls. The caption read, "The Keeper of Lost Souls." A chill washed over her. What had she stepped into? Suddenly, a frantic banging echoed in her ears, a sound like desperate hands pounding against wood. It was rhythmic, almost deliberate, like a countdown. Panic surged again. She couldn't let Ethan down. She had to break this cycle. "Let me help you," she cried out to the flickering faces. They remained silent, their expressions frozen in agony. The shadows lunged, a wave of darkness threatening to swallow her whole. Heart pounding harder, she pressed her palms against the pages. The whispers coalesced into a low hum, growing louder, vibrating beneath her skin. With resolute force, Marissa shouted, "I command you. Release him." The words felt powerful and strange. Perhaps she was channeling something greater. The candle flared brightly, casting long, jagged shadows that danced across the walls. For a brief moment, the shadows halted, the faces still, their focus shifting toward her. It was as if time had frozen. She felt raw energy pooling at her core, a summons, but was it a gift or a curse? "Join us," the whisper came back, more forceful now, woven with seductive promises. "If you don't, you will lose him forever." Doubt seeped into her heart. What if she couldn't find Ethan? What if she lost herself here too? Panic clawed at her throat. The Keeper of Lost Souls could take many forms. What if she became one? Suddenly, the candle flickered rapidly, casting the room into intermittent darkness. Her whispers grew frantic, echoes of torment boiling up as the edges of reality blurred. Before she could think, a figure appeared at the periphery of her vision. Dark and menacing, it loomed out of the shadows, shrouded in a thick veil of despair. It lifted its head, revealing sunken eyes that glistened like black pools. Marissa's breath hitched, recognizing the wildness of that gaze, the same fear and desperation she felt. "Ethan!" She lunged forward, but the figure melted back into the darkness, leaving only a faint whisper in its wake. Too late. Panic gripped her as she spun, eyes darting, searching for the boy whose face haunted her mind. The shadows began to rearrange, merging into a vast wall of despair, growing and twisting like they were alive. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked, despair spilling over. But it was a different voice that answered, low and resonant, sending chills down her spine. "Who do you choose, Marissa? Him or yourself?" Time seemed to freeze again, the shadows waiting, watching her with bated breath. The air grew thick with an unnameable tension. Marissa glanced around. Each fleeting face from the wall whispered her name, hissing at her decision. The weight of choice pressed against her. Her heart pounded like a war drum. "Choose wisely," the dark voice commanded. Fear pierced her heart as she faced the encroaching shadows. She was running out of time, and Ethan was somewhere lost in this nightmare. "I'll find you, Ethan. I swear." But was she making a promise or a lie? The darkness tightened around her, its grip as sharp as a vice. Would she give in, become one of them, or fight until the bitter end? The last flicker of the candle dimmed, plunging her into an ominous silence. And then, a faint chorus rose from the depths of the shadows. Choose. In that moment, she understood that every step forward could either bring her closer to Ethan or seal her fate forever. What awaited her was shrouded in greater terror, and she wasn't sure if the shadows would let her go again. Would she make the right choice? Or had her journey taken her too far to turn back? Marissa's heart raced, a chaotic symphony of terror and resolve. The shadows swirled around her, thickening, pressing against her skin like a suffocating fog. She could barely breathe, the air heavy with despair and whispers that clawed at her sanity. Choose echoed in her mind, an incessant drumbeat pushing her toward an answer shrouded in dread. What do you want from me? She screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of anxiety. The shadows seemed to pulse with her fear, a throbbing mass of anguish that wrapped tighter around her with each heartbeat. It felt as though they were preparing to devour her whole. Find him, the command wove in and out of the whispers like a sinister lullaby. The desperation mixed with her doubt, twisting her insides. She felt small and vulnerable, a lone candle fighting against a storm. Without thinking, she turned her gaze to the wall of souls, their faces etched in eternal sorrow. Their eyes were hollow, yet filled with urgency. Ethan. She called out, her voice a fragile wisp against the roaring chaos. Where are you? His essence is lost, just like yours, the dark voice uttered, smooth and mocking. It slithered through the shadows as if feeding off her despair. You can embrace the void together, or remain trapped in this torment alone. Each choice felt increasingly impossible, gnawing away at her will. She stepped back, trying to gain clarity, but the very ground beneath her seemed to shift. Shadows writhed like snakes, the air crackled with malice. I want to let you take him. She shouted defiantly, but even her own words felt weak and hollow. Doubt poisoned her thoughts as she remembered the last time she saw him. Ethan's joyful smile framed by radiant sunlight was a stark contrast to the darkness now enveloping her. Gritting her teeth, Marissa took a step forward, the whispers growing louder as they celebrated her moment of resolve. I choose to save him. The declaration shook her. But was it a choice, or merely an echo of the keeper's manipulation? Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, a collective gasping sigh that rattled through the room. Your resolve is commendable, the voice hissed, while distant echoes of laughter cascaded around her. But will it guide you to the right path? In her chest, panic surged to a new height, each breath coming quicker as she struggled to maintain control. She had to do something, anything. This was her only chance. Her fingers brushed against the book's spine, heat radiating from its pages, as if urging her to unlock its secrets. She opened it, desperately flipping past the creeping images, searching for answers. Each page revealed horrors that twisted her stomach, demons, lost souls, and terrible fates, but amid the suffering, flickers of hope ignited in the corners of her mind. Stories of the brave escaping the abyss, reclaiming their lives. Ethan, Ethan. She cried again, her voice mingling with the eerie resonance of the shadows. The darkness rippled, reacting to her summons, and just like that, a fleeting memory pushed through the claustrophobic grip. She remembered Ethan's laughter, a sound that conjured comfort even here in hell. As if in response, a glowing light flared in the distance. It pulsed like a heartbeat. There. That way. She pressed on, bolstered by newfound determination, unaware that the shadows seethed in fury behind her. But no sooner did she take a step toward the light than a weight slammed against her chest. The shadows surged forth, shrieking in indignation. You can't leave. They howled, voices a cacophony of anguish. Marissa stumbled, heart hammering. Was this the moment the abyss would claim her? Would she succumb to the swirling despair? No, she refused to submit. She had to fight through the darkness, but then, an unexpected betrayal. A hand reached out from the shadows, catching her trembling wrist. It was cold, devoid of life, yet pulsed with undeniable energy. And then it whispered, trust in the keeper. The choice was slipping from her grasp as the darkness encroached again. Could she trust what lay ahead? Or was she stepping into a trap designed to snare her soul for eternity? As the candle flickered once more, illuminating shadows behind her, Marissa realized the true nightmare was only beginning. Ethan. She screamed, desperate, caught between fragmented memories and the allure of the sinister figure waiting in the dark. Would she plunge deeper into the unknown, or fight against the tide of despair that threatened to engulf her whole? Marissa's breath came in sharp, frantic gasps, the weight of the chilling grip around her wrist tightening. The hand from the darkness felt like ice, yet it ignited a spark of fear mixed with something else: curiosity. Anticipation. The shadows thrashed wildly at her back, angry and vengeful, their shrieks a haunting chorus of desperation. Trust in the Keeper, the words slithered through her mind, teasing her. What did it mean? Trust the entity that brought her here. The Keeper could very well be synonymous with deception. Yet, in this harrowing dilemma, what choice did she truly have? The glowing light pulsed again, drawing her gaze like a moth to a flame. It beckoned her, a whisper of hope in a nightmare of despair. But the grip on her wrist tightened further, pulling her back into the darkness. She was torn between the unknown promise of light and the chilling presence of the Keeper who held part of her fate. "Let me go!" she cried out, adrenaline surging as she fought against the hold. The shadows shrieked, alive with malice, and for a moment, she feared they would rip her apart. But she couldn't yield. Not now. Not ever. Twisting her wrist free, she stumbled away into the thin light ahead. As she broke free, the shadows recoiled as if struck. The relief was momentary, replaced in an instant by a cold dread creeping back in. "Ethan!" she shouted again, her voice splintering into the emptiness. Her voice echoed, twisted and mangled, endlessly reverberating through the void. She sprinted toward the flickering illumination, a fragile beacon amidst the consuming dark. But just when she thought she could reach it, the ground shifted beneath her feet, swallowing up the path with a sullen growl. Panic surged through her. "Stay with us," the voice wrapped around her like a serpent, demanding, pleading. Yet it was not Ethan's voice. It was the Keeper again, its tone an intoxicating melody that made her blood run cold. "I don't belong to you," she asserted, heart pounding as fury and fear intertwined. The light flickered uncertainly, pulsing like a heartbeat. It felt alive. Was it guiding her or simply playing another cruel trick? A flicker of a shadow darted toward her, a dark figure lunging from a swirling mass. Panic washed over her as she recognized the face hauntingly familiar. "Ethan." She dared to whisper, the name nothing more than a breath on her lips. That it was too late, the figure melded back into the darkness, losing form once more. "Help me," it echoed, fragmented, as if the very essence of it was being devoured by the shadows. Tears prickled in her eyes. "No!" she screamed, struggling against her emotions. The Keeper seemed to shift slightly at her defiance, and a mirthless laugh erupted, echoing around her, a grotesque mockery. "Do you see? Here, all is lost. Here, love turns to agony, defiance becomes despair." A jolt coursed through Marissa, her fear morphing into something fiercer. She wiped the beads of sweat from her brow, determination swelling within her. "I will find him. I'll tear this darkness apart if I must." The shadows recoiled further, as if her declaration had pierced them. But the oppressive weight of the Keeper still hung above her like a thundercloud. With renewed resolve, she trudged forward through the darkness, the light now pulsing with urgency, summoning her deeper. Each step felt like entering the mouth of a beast. Then, a rumble echoed through the void, vibrating in her bones as a whisper hissed beyond it. "Every choice has its price." The certainty clawed its way into her heart, reminding her of her own limits. Was she prepared to pay? And then, a fissure opened between the dark shadows, light breaking through in shards. Was this a true escape or a gaping maw luring her into the depths? Feeling a dread-filled chill race down her spine, Marissa's heart raced again, not from terror this time, but from the desperate hope blooming within. "Ethan!" she cried once more, desperation laced with determination. She would confront whatever lay ahead, but the Keeper's laughter faded into the echoes of uncertainty. The shadows began to close in again, threatening to drown her before she ever discovered the truth. What lay ahead in that blinding light? Was it salvation, or another snare? Uncertainty gripped Marissa as she stepped closer. Marissa took a deep breath, feeling the electric tension buzz in the air as she stepped tentatively into the glimmering light. The shadows lurked just outside the edges of her vision, pulsating with an almost sentient hunger, yet she couldn't allow fear to pull her back. Heat radiated off her skin, the warmth of potential breaching the cold despair that had gripped her for so long. With every heartbeat, the memories of her son surged to the forefront of her mind. Ethan's laughter, his innocence, the moments that made up their life together. "I'm coming for you," she shouted into the light, a fierce challenge against the looming darkness. A sudden wave of energy enveloped her, and in a flash, she found herself within the strange illumination. The air changed, it was lighter, almost tangible with a sense of hope. Flickering colors danced before her, teasing her with glimpses of what was. She felt different, somehow stronger, unshackled from the weight of instruction and fear that had previously confined her thoughts. "Ethan!" she called again, her voice rock solid. Shadows remained tethered to her, scratching and clawing, but they held back as if respecting the incandescent brightness surrounding her now. Then, from the glowing expanse in front of her, she heard it, a whisper, faint but undeniably familiar, just beneath the surface. "Mommy, Ethan." The sound sent a thrill down her spine, drawing her deeper into the light. It intensified, enveloping her in warmth that wrapped around her like an embrace. In that moment, the memories rushed forward like a tidal wave. She saw Ethan's wide, innocent eyes, the way they sparkled with mischief, the sound of his delighted giggles echoing through their home. The shadows began to twist like phantoms, momentarily held back as if barred from crossing into this sphere of warmth. Then, the light flared brighter, and there he was. Ethan stood before her, framed by luminescent energy, radiating a calm that dispelled the darkness clinging to existence. "Mommy!" His voice was sweet relief. She rushed forward, kneeling before him as joy and dread swirled together. "I thought I lost you." "It's okay, I knew you would find me," Ethan said, eyes shimmering like emeralds, safe and aware, but as their embrace wrapped around them with powerful certainty, the moment shattered like glass. The darkness surged anew, angered by the emergence of light, rushing in with a deafening roar. She could feel the weight of the keeper, the shadows whispering threats and promises made wickedly appealing. "Stay close," Marissa urged, her heart pounding as they stumbled backward into the warmth of the light. Yet even as they held onto each other, they could feel the shadows creeping closer, cold fingers grazing the outside of their sanctuary. "Marissa!" A sinister hiss rolled through the darkness. "You made your choice, now embrace the cost." An icy tendril snaked through the light barrier, capturing Ethan's leg. "No!" Marissa screamed, pulling him free. But in a split second, the keeper lunged forward. "You cannot escape your fate." Fueled by wild determination, Marissa reached for the book that still pulsed with energy hanging by her side. "I decide my fate," she yelled defiantly, clutching the worn pages. She could feel the power surge and began to chant the words she had memorized from the cursed tome. As she spoke with conviction, the light amplified. The shadows shrieked, a chaotic cacophony rising around them, but Marissa pushed through it, determined to reclaim her life, to rescue her son from this malevolence. "You may try to steal our light, but we hold the truth. We rise against despair." In a burst of luminescence, pure and unyielding, the shadows shrank back, wailing in torment. They twisted and writhed, the keeper's hold weakening as the intensity of Marissa and Ethan's love ignited the room. With a final, desperate cry, she slammed the book closed, unleashing a radiant explosion of light. The air crackled as it pushed against the dark, obliterating the wretched whispers that haunted them. The keeper howled, dissolving into fragments of darkness that scattered before the fury of truth and love entwined. "Mommy!" Ethan looked up at her, pure trust radiating from his bright gaze. Marissa knelt, lifting him into her arms, holding him tight, fear and anguish falling away as they were held together in the welcoming warmth. She felt as if they were reborn. Together, they stepped forward, the last remnants of dark shadows fading into oblivion. There was nothing left to torment them. "Let us go home," she whispered, voice trembling with unfiltered hope. And they turned towards the flicker of light growing brighter ahead, a passage leading them back to the world they knew, one filled with warmth, laughter, and a love that can withstand any darkness. With every step, the weight of horror melted away, replaced by the tenderness of reunion, as they walk together into the dawn of a new beginning. But wait! This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this exhilarating finale.